In this video, I'll be talking about another key theme of Daodejing, De. The text Daodejing is actually originally just called Laozi, or the book of Laozi. It's later on that it's called Daodejing. One reason is because this text talks about Dao, which I talked about in the first video, Chang Dao, or what's called constant Dao. And I also talk about the aspects of this constant Dao, Wu Wei and Ziran, in my second video and in my third video respectively. So we've covered some aspects of Dao, constant Dao. In this video, we'll be talking about the De of Daodejing. De can mean straightness, properness, integrity, virtue, ascendance, attainment. These are some of the meanings that De can be. De is apparently already in use in Shang dynasties in divination descriptions. So the character De is already in use before the composition of Daodejing. And Daodejing is supposedly composed in late Zhou dynasty. And Zhou dynasty came after Shang dynasty. So De is apparently already in use quite early on, in divination descriptions. And this is an oracle bone, which is often used for divination purposes. And characters, Chinese characters, are carved onto these oracle bones. And De is supposedly found in some of these oracle bones. Of all the meanings of De, one meaning of De, virtue, came to great prominence in early Zhou dynasty, especially in relation to people and heaven. De as virtue. Why so? Why the focus of De, especially in terms of governance for early Zhou dynasty? This is due to the volatile political situation then. Maybe let me give you some background to what's happening in early Zhou dynasty or even earlier, to late Shang dynasty. So this is the road from Shang dynasty to Zhou dynasty. During Shang dynasty, the dark orange portion is the area of influence of Shang dynasty. So during Shang dynasty, Zhou is an ambitious but patient small tribe in Shang dynasty. So Zhou is here. It's a small area, a small tribe. But Zhou cultivated its strength and alliances in a bid to overthrow Shang. So fairly early on, Zhou has already had that ambition to overthrow Shang, to take over Shang, even though it's a small tribe. So it's rather ambitious, but it's also patient. The rulers and the people were patient. They slowly build up their strength, build up alliances in a bid to overthrow Shang. And eventually, and finally in 1046 BC, Zhou had formed a coalition to attack the capital of Shang then, which is Chaoge in this area. So they had a coalition to attack Shang. Why during this period? Why during this period of 1046 BC? This is because the main troops of Shang were busy fighting the Yi barbarians in the east, the Dongyi. Okay, so Shang, the capital then, they had already dispatched troops towards the east to fight the Dongyi, what we will call the eastern barbarians. So most of the main forces they were already out, and Zhou coalition took the opportunity to move and attack the stronghold of Shang then. But Shang still managed to gather a massive ad hoc force mixed with armed slaves to resist Zhou's coalition. So the slaves of Shang dynasty, Shang dynasty made use of a lot of slaves to work for them. And the slaves were in the last minute armed with weapons to combine together to resist Zhou. But the outcome was that the Zhou coalition won, and the last Shang ruler committed suicide. And so Zhou dynasty was formed. And supposedly the war took place in just a matter of less than 2 months. Very fast, 30 to 50 days. And if you were to compare to Qing of the Zhou dynasty, Qing actually took about 9 years to overthrow Zhou. So after Zhou took over from Shang, after a few hundred years, Qing took over from Zhou. And the main warfare of Qing took 9 years. And the main difference was that Qing actually conquered all the states one by one, until finally the whole land was under its military control. Whereas for Zhou, in overthrowing Shang, Zhou only managed to conquer the capital city, and the last Shang ruler committed suicide, and that was how Zhou dynasty was formed. Due to the sort of rapid collapse of Shang dynasty, probably, the early Zhou rulers started reflecting, why did Shang lose so quickly? And why was Zhou able to win? And one of the key reasons was that the slaves defected to Zhou. And this actually sort of destroyed the morale of the Shang troops. Okay, the slaves, they were armed by Shang to fight against Zhou, but the slaves changed sides to join with the Zhou instead. And also, Shang was famous for harsh punishments. So there were quite a number of people who were not happy with the last Shang rulers. Okay, and one of the famous harsh punishment is shown in this picture here, whereby the criminal is chopped up into parts and bits. And according to some records, it seems like sometimes they were chopped up even while alive. Not sure how true. Okay, and there were also other things like human sacrifices. The Shang dynasty actually conducted human sacrifices, probably as some sort of appeal to their deities or gods, kind of like the Aztec civilization. And generally, it seems that it was the slaves who were sacrificed, although some of the sacrifices can involve the nobles, but primarily it should be the slaves. So there are issues with Shang. As for Zhou, Zhou had high morale, and the people were united. That was one of the key reasons why Zhou was able to succeed. So the early Zhou rulers realized that pacification of people is important. And so even though they had to resort to Fengjian rule, Fengjian rule is a decentralized system of governing the land, where the lands they will parcel out to different dukes to rule and build up sort of a feudalistic, aristocratic way of ruling the whole big piece of land. And why Fengjian rule also? Because, as I mentioned earlier, Zhou only managed to capture the capital city. The rest of the land were pretty much left on their own. So to rule them, they actually had to send dukes, different people, to go to the land to rule them. But it's a decentralized system, which means the central state, the central authority of Zhou had little control over the peripheral states. And in such a Fengjian system of ruling, the Zhou rulers focused on virtue and less on punishment to make the people conform. So instead of using punishment to make the people conform, they focused on virtue to rally the people, to get the people to work for Zhou. And this is encapsulated in the phrase 明德慎罚, which means promote virtue, punish carefully. Okay, this is one of sort of the doctrine which the early Zhou rulers like Zhou Gong gave to some of the dukes who were sent to the land to rule. So promote virtue, punish carefully is key to stable governance, primarily because it helps reduce enmity. So the people were not angry or in a mood for revolution or rebellion. Even though during the early Zhou dynasty, there were actually rebellions. Another key thing that the Zhou rulers reflected upon was the justification of legitimacy. Okay, they realized it's also very important. After all, Shang dynasty has been around for about 500 years. So how do you actually justify the change of regime? People are accustomed to the Shang as rulers, and suddenly now the Zhou say that we are the rulers. They need to have a way to justify why, and why that they are the legitimate rulers of the land now. So there's this doctrine called the mandate of heaven, 天命, whereby it said that heaven takes away the mandate from an unvirtuous ruler and gives it to a virtuous one, which means rulership can be changed. And the main reason for such a change is virtue. If the ruler is unvirtuous, the ruler is supposedly not fit to rule. And the virtuous one can come over to take over. And heaven will give this new virtuous person the mandate to rule. So as we can see, the focus in early Zhou dynasty becomes pretty much on the virtue. So the meaning of the as virtue came into prominence in early Zhou dynasty, especially in relation to people in heaven. What about the meaning of the in Daodejing? Mainly virtue and attainment. But what does it really mean? So in Daodejing, De is like the virtue that attains to Tao. Kind of like in early Zhou dynasty, where De, the virtuous, can attain to mandate of heaven. In Daodejing, De is like the virtue that attains to Tao. And as we have seen in the first video, Dao actually is kind of related to the Dao of heaven. And the attainment seems specifically about the life-giving aspect of Dao. Let's look at some quotes from section 51, part 1. Dao produces, gives life. De stores life. Things of life are formed. Vessels of life are accomplished. So some of you will have seen this, de here. De stores, and stores the life, this life which Dao produces or gives. So de in a way is that which attains to Dao, especially the production and giving of life aspect. And what sort of de can attain to Dao? Is from another section, section 11, part 1. Produce, give life to, store, maintain it. In producing, giving life without being existent, in leading, guiding without dominance, this is called dark de. So if you can see here again de, but it's a special sort of de. It's called xuan de, which is also called dark de in translation. Xuan is dark, and de is here. So it's a sort of special sort of de which attains to Dao, the production giving aspect of Dao. And how is it done is without being existent. So dark de is sort of like this major yin here, the major dark patch. In guarding to without being or existence, it actually arises its opposite, the minor yang. And such that this yin and yang is in symmetry. And dark in chapter 1 is said to be symmetry. So in guarding to non-being, non-existence, it actually arises being, existence, such that non-being and being are actually in a symmetry. This is called dark de. Those who are interested to find out more about dark, or in Chinese we call xuan, can read section 1 again of Daodejing. You'll get an idea, and you'll be able to relate it also to the theme of 自然 and how it all ties up together. And once we have such an understanding, we can read section 38, part 1, where it said that the high de clings not to de, and so there is de. The low de aims not to lose de, and so there is no de. Which means the high de, the de that attains to Dao, clings not to de. It doesn't cling to the existence of de or the being of de, and so there is de. It's like non-being and being in a symmetry. Whereas the low de, this type of de, they do not attain to Dao. They actually aim not to lose de. They continue to try to portray that they are virtuous, that they have the attainment, and in doing so, there's actually no de, no attainment to Dao. So de, in a way, is sort of an attainment of non-attainment, whereby being and non-being, they are in symmetry, or what we call xuan, or dark. Okay, the translations are taken from my book. You can read them for free at my Google site. Okay, thank you for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed them.